Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Toronto Argonauts. A couple Canadian League teams that I'm also, trying to get traded to. So it's been great conversations. It's done. It's old. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here. We're gonna figure this thing out. Um, it's just too special to leave. So we're gonna be, you know, what we felt like we should have been and correct all the little, mistakes.
Damian Woody is back with us here in the studio. Now, you guys just heard Odell say that he's not going anywhere. So, Max, how confident are you that he can turn it around in Cleveland?
Oh, I think he can turn it around. I think he needs another coach. Baker Mayfield, whatever his flaws, has shown he can perform at a certain level in the NFL. He did it in his first season, his rookie season. You saw him take over once he had a coach that wasn't good for him, at least. But Hugh Jackson didn't win any games, so he was a bad coach. Once he got a coach that he clicked with, he was, throwing a lot more open receivers, and he looked pretty good. Odell Beckham got into the league, played 11 games, and went for 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns as a 22-year-old. 23-year-old, 15 games, 1,450 yards, 13 TDs. 24-year-old, played all 16 games, 1,350 yards, 10 TDs. Then he got hurt. Then he came back, played in, whatever was a dozen games and got over 1,000 yards. And then, the Giants, really was not a good situation. He gets traded to Cleveland where they don't know how to use him. So unless you think Odell has lost his talent, he was putting up those numbers I mentioned on a team with no offensive line and a quarterback who couldn't do it anymore. And they didn't even have a running game back then. And he was putting up those numbers. So I have to think if you just have competence in Cleveland, you just have a competent situation, Odell Beckham is going to be able to put up now at the age of 27. It's been a while since, is this a functional kind of competent situation? No. Was it last year for him? No. The year before? No. Has he ever had it in his career? He's never had it in his career, but he was putting up record-breaking numbers early on. So unless the injuries really robbed him of athletic ability, and from what you can see, he's obviously still very athletic, I have to believe that as the competency around him increases, you will see him going back to putting up absurd numbers. I think he'll be fine, but the situation has to get better.
I think that you're completely wrong about this, Max Kellerman, because of exactly what you just said. As the level of competency or what have you surrounding him improves. Stop right there. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. What are you talking about? I mean, in order to believe in Odell Beckham Jr. in Cleveland, you have to believe in the pieces that are going to be around him. What I would say to you is that because Baker Mayfield ain't going anywhere, neither is an upgrade in production from Odell Beckham Jr. Because I don't believe in Baker Mayfield to that level. Do I believe he's a scrub? Absolutely not. But I do believe this is a man's game. I do believe that he's still growing and needing to mature. And I don't believe that his size is beneficial to him as it pertains to Odell Beckham Jr. Just think about this for a second. And Damian, help me out here if you can in a minute. When you are a relatively miniature quarterback, a lot of things have to do with timing, which has to do with faith. I'm going to throw the ball in a certain spot because I'm confident, A, that you're going to be there, and B, the chemistry and cohesiveness between you and I, quarterback to receiver, is there. How can that possibly be the case? Yes, we have questions about Kitchens, but we also have questions about Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield might only be completing 60% of his passes, 17 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, a QBR of 42, might have been sacked 34 times this year, but it's not just that. We're looking at a guy whose skills on this level is questionable. You have people thinking he was going to be a stud, and that has not been the case. He makes far too many mistakes. He holds on to the ball far too much longer than he should. Obviously, that's contributed to him being sacked, et cetera, et cetera. Then what do you do if you're Dorsey in concert with Kitchens? First of all, you give Baker Mayfield the coach he wanted. That was mistake number one. Number two, you got Jarvis Landry, you got Nick Chubb, and Njoku's been out. What about when he comes back? Kareem Hunt is there. Too many guys with their hands out wanting their shine. As a result of it, because of the immaturity on that squad in terms of leadership, combined with the personalities that you have, with a Baker Mayfield at the quarterback spot, there is no way in hell, in my estimation, that situation is going to work for Odell Beckham Jr. He is a star, but he is a star that hasn't been one this year, and I blame Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens for that, and I think Odell Beckham Jr. needs to be elsewhere. It ain't going to work in Cleveland because he never wanted to be there to begin with. He really wanted to be in L.A., not Cleveland, Ohio.
Listen, I'm a fan of Odell Beckham Jr. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is
So
a
am I.
transcendent talent. No one can deny that. Coach Belichick used to say that good players can't overcome bad coaching, can't overcome disasters as far as organizations are concerned. And I think that's my issue with as it relates to Odell Beckham and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns as an organization is the only franchise that hasn't been to a postseason. I think this whole millennia. They're the only franchise that hasn't done it.
Since the dawn of creation.
Think of the ineptitude that you got to have as an organization that you haven't even sniffed the playoffs in that period of time. It's been that long. And regardless of what we think of Odell Beckham and all the different physical attributes that he brings to the table, the one-hand catches, the speed, and all those type of things, when you have dysfunction around you, when you have a first-year quarterback that's dictating who the head coach is going to be, think about that. You're talking about a guy who just come into the league, had a pretty good rookie year. There's no question about that. But basically dictated terms to have a guy who was a position coach, and in a matter of like a less than a calendar year, got elevated to being a head coach. Those are the type of things that dysfunctional organizations do. Okay, and we've seen these type of things backfire time and time again. So again, I'm going to say one more time, I don't dispute Odell Beckham's talent, but if he's going to get back on track like we all think he can do, I don't think it can be with the Cleveland Browns.
Let me ask you guys something, because I know whatever problems the Giants have as an organization and at the ownership level, the Giants are very respected, including by me. Odell Beckham Jr., the first 3 years of his career, averaged around, I'm rounding up sometimes here, 14 games.
I have the numbers in front of me if you want them.
Right, but I'm just averaging for those 3 seasons. Around 14 games, 1,400 yards, a little less, but around 1,400, and a dozen touchdowns a year for a team with no line, an aging and really a very bad quarterback for a starter compared to the rest of the league, and no running game. I don't think anyone's ever done something like that. So you mean to tell me he can't overcome a situation where he has a better line, a better quarterback, and a better running game?
Well, hold the thought. Hold the thought, Max. And again, none of us up here are questioning the greatness of Odell Beckham Jr. We know a transcendent talent when we see it, okay? And by the way, I personally believe he's gotten a bad rap in terms of his personality. I think too many things have been overblown. He's not some criminal. He's not going off the field and getting himself into trouble or anything like that. He's been slightly temperamental at times, and that's about it. And I think people have overreacted to it personally. But having said that, let me say this, Max. 2016, Odell Beckham Jr. had 10 touchdowns in 13 games. 2017, he only had played 4 games because he had that injury. He had 3 touchdowns. Last year, he played 12 games. He had 6 touchdowns. This year, he's got 2 touchdowns in 14 games. So last season wasn't that great either. Yeah. That's not about him. It just shows that when you have somebody that's questionable at the quarterback position and or the coaching position, it can inhibit your productivity.
You're right. That's true. He was also coming off injury, and at that point, the Giants really were a mess. So I look at Cleveland, and I agree. Like, the reason Kitchens did a really bad job is whatever you want to say, the eyeballs just on the talent. They got enough talent, and by the way, that's why they won 7 games. They're going to wind up on however many wins they have right now. The point is, they're not going to be much under 500 at the end of the year, And that's with the disaster that they are because they're that talented. That's not the Giants. So you got to think a competent coach, a league average, even a tick under league average head coach. And Odell's going to be back with double-digit touchdowns. And if he can stay healthy, 1,300 yards, something like that. I mean, that's conservative.
Well, I mean, but listen, Max, my thing is what the Cleveland Browns has done this year is they've acquired a bunch of talented players, not necessarily a team.
Yeah.
Okay, because when you look at all the pieces that they have in place, I mean, think about it. You got Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., David Njoku at tight end. You got 2 stud running backs in the backfield. How many do you? Everyone can't get the ball.
Yeah.
Everyone can't get the ball. And the numbers that you pointed out, can we realistically expect Odell Beckham Jr. to put up those type of numbers with all of those pieces around?
Well, okay, but then it's like Julio Jones. Then it's like if the issue then is if you're not getting the ball, then you better be winning and other guys are wide open. Like the criticism of the Falcons and any team Odell's been on his way. If they're not getting the ball, why isn't everyone else going crazy?
All right, we have to table this conversation.
Rank on Max and Damian. Don't y'all know we have a break to get to?
Thank you.
I gotta be forceful?
Thank you, Stephen A. Thank you so much.
If I want to keep talking, I'm going to keep talking. You don't pull any rank being via, you coming in via satellite. You don't pull rank up here.
Damian, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're actually leaving at the perfect time because it's about to get hot in here because coming up next at the top of the hour, the Hall of Famer Michael Irvin joins us to school Stephen A. about the biggest game of Big D's season. Plus,